This is the first panel discussion for this year's DKF event, and we will be talking to the subject of accessibility of data in an industry where outsourced services and platforms are becoming the standard. The background to this is that customers are looking for simplified and on-demand services to market data from wherever they are, whether that is on-prem or in cloud. And in a post-pandemic world, it will become even more obvious that accessibility to market data must be compatible with the changing needs of how customers want to consume market data. Key themes customers are exploring would include adopting cloud to consume not just static data, but also streaming content, embracing a single preferred interface and accompanying data model to consume market data, servicing across a range of different use cases, and switching to an on-demand consumption model where you only receive what you want when you need it. So what are the possibilities, but also the limitations in providing this? With me today, virtually from various places in the world, is a distinguished panel with representatives from firms that have solutions in the cloud or are working with them. I will ask every one of the four members to introduce themselves, tell us what they do, but also what their definition of cloud is, because it seems that that is a good thing to do to get some clarity on the topic of cloud. Can I start with Henk, please? Henk de Hoor.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Henk Doorn. I'm a senior director at ICE. ICE is a global data and technology company that effectively designs, builds, and runs digital networks. We have a few of those. There's an exchange network. We run a number of equity and futures exchanges around the globe, including the New York Stock Exchange. We also recently ventured into the mortgage technology business. And third, we also run a fixed income and data services network where we bring market data and execution capabilities together. And it's in that segment I'm responsible for our streaming consolidated feeds, as well as our historical data solution called ICE Data Vault. To quickly come back to your question about cloud, I'm not going to dwell on it for too long, but cloud is a broad concept. I like to think about clouds as technology environments where technical resources are pooled and shared across multiple users. If those users belong to one single entity, you could think of that as a private cloud. If those resources are shared across multiple tenants, you might think of that as a public cloud. And most firms now seem to interact with multiple clouds at the same time. You know, some companies think of that as hybrid cloud adoption, trying to get a best of breed between those different cloud environments and operate and seek, efficiencies in their workflows that way. That's perhaps a good intro, EJ, for the subject.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Henk. Corey, could I ask you to introduce yourself as well as give your definition of cloud?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Corey Albert, and I manage cloud strategy for Bloomberg's enterprise data business. The enterprise data business at Bloomberg provides our customers with a wealth of content to service front, middle, and back office use cases. So content sets that include data such as pricing data, reference data, corporate actions research, news, alternative data, Bloomberg evaluated pricing, and much more, essentially anything that you need to trade an instrument. That content can be delivered in both real-time streaming or end of day. And we use various technologies to align with these customers' delivery requirements. So for us, cloud is really a focal point of our technology roadmap to ensure that our data sets are readily accessible and also usable by customers that choose to run their workloads in a public cloud. In my job, I also look for ways in which we can leverage cloud for our technology stack to just improve our overall offerings. I think some of our example products have included just making our data license data sets, so our reference data, which is file-based, available natively in AWS so that customers could use native cloud S3 APIs to access those data and really transfer data from our data lake to their data lake in a seamless fashion. We also, on the real-time streaming side, we also leveraged cloud to create a new distribution model for our BPipe product, which is our consolidated market data feed. And with the cloud, we're able to eliminate our customers' need for on-premises appliances, which is a common technology used in the real-time streaming business, hence reducing their costs while maintaining latency, low latency, I should say. As for my definition of cloud, I totally agree with what Hank said, and I think, just to even focus in more or even simplify it for those that aren't familiar with cloud, I view it very traditionally as far as the public cloud being the AWS, the Azures, and the GCPs. I know there's more, but in the financial industry, that's who we see our customers leveraging. And, what I love about the cloud is that I can spin up services on demand for basic things like infrastructure, so that's your compute and your storage. But as the cloud has progressed and matured, I can now spin up services for more mature technology stacks like data warehouses, databases, and even analytics functions. So I'm excited to see the future of cloud and see how vendors like Bloomberg and ICE and the others on the panel are able to leverage cloud to offer more software solutions as a service for our clients.
Great. Thank you, Corey. Roy, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, EJ. So hello, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon. My name's Roy Kirby, and I work for Six Group. Six Group runs the Swiss Stock Exchange. We also run the Spanish Stock Exchange through our BME group. We also run banking services within Switzerland predominantly. We also have an index business in Switzerland, Spain, and the Nordics. And we run a new setup called the Swiss Digital Exchange. We also have a financial information business of which I am a member. I'm head of what we call our core products in financial information, and I look after market data, corporate actions, and reference data, which I think is why I'm speaking on this panel, to give a bit of a view as to what we see our customer trends being in the last year and going forward. What's my definition of the cloud? It's probably very similar to Hank's and Corey's, which is I see cloud now as a set of evolving technologies. I think they're technologies which allow us as a firm, but also our customers, to do the things that the guys have said, which is to look at the way we standardize access to data, databases, hardware, and reduce some of the costs of doing that ourselves, or some of the costs of doing that for our customers. I use the word evolving because I think we're seeing a lot of change in the industry at the moment, a lot of different adoptions of different technologies. I think it's an interesting time to think about what we could do with these technologies going forward.
Excellent. Thanks, Roy. And then last but not least, Patrick Engelhardt.
Yes, thank you. Hello from Zurich. My name is Patrick Engelhardt. I'm globally responsible at SimCorp for all the data and reporting services. SimCorp, as you might know, is a huge technology and solution provider for the financial industry that is really covering the end-to-end value chain from front office over the back office, the middle office, as well as to reporting solutions. And for us, it is very important that we embark now also on the service journey. So we're not just a solution provider, we're also an outcome-based service provider, or becoming an outcome-based service provider. And I think that is a very important point, and also reflects of the changes in the market. Yeah. So we see a complete change of behavior when we have been asked 4 or 5 years ago to provide solutions enabling the customers to produce outcome. In certain areas, the customer is now asking for outcome. And on the one side, I will actually wear the hat of a service or solution provider. On the other side, also the hat of a customer that has a lot of experience with the different data vendors and working with them. So that's going to be also for me very, very exciting. Coming back to your question, and of course, there's an advantage of being the last in such a round, because so much has been said. For me, the cloud is, and for us in the service area, is an opportunity. Besides all the technical stack, it is an opportunity the first time to create these ecosystems that customer really need to seamlessly consume the data, not only over one or from one source, over multiple sources in multiple stages. And I think that is going to be, from a development perspective, extremely interesting, because I think all of us as members of these data supply and service chain need to rethink certain areas of their business models, which is going to be quite exciting.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. That was already very insightful, and thanks for those definitions and introductions. The first questions which we have prepared, so it should be easy to answer, is can you tell us what impact the pandemic has and is still having on the provision of cloud services within our industry? Henk, could you take that one first?
Yes, sure. I think perhaps this sounds a bit ironic, but I think we were lucky that the pandemic struck when it did. Imagine this pandemic had hit us 5 years or God beware 10 years ago. I think we would be in quite a different state. I think most firms already were comfortable supporting remote workforces to a certain degree. Most firms already have embraced cloud technology as well. So in that sense, when the pandemic struck, it was a surprise, but firms weren't unprepared. I think they had to really ramp up their efforts rapidly to overcome the sudden challenges they had to meet. In our world, by the way, the biggest challenges we had were, on the one hand side, capacity management, because volatility went through the roof. But second, also managing people, because normally you send your network engineers all over the world to manage a data center and actually spin up new service for clients the traditional way. So of course, customers that were already using the clouds and could spin up services that way through vendors that could support them the same way without having any physical people getting into data centers was a huge advantage. I think from my perspective, I can share a stat which I think is quite striking as well. And in 2019, about 1 in 20 of our customers who are connecting to the feed for the first time would do so from the clouds, so 1 in 20. In 2020, that actually turned out to be 1 in 4, which demonstrates how much customers have shifted focus and frankly have embraced confidently the cloud for many use cases. And I think we're going to touch on this later in this discussion as well, because the use case I think is quite interesting as well. Patterns have moved on as cloud services have become more mature from a vendor point of view.
Thanks, Henk. Roy, what can you add from your perspective?
I think I can add one thing, which is, and I think we've seen this with certainly our own firms, is it can be done. Yeah. I think there's this attitude in customers now that it can be done. So let's speed things up. I think that's the biggest change we've seen in the last year. It's not can we do it, will we do it? It's let's do it. It can be done. If we all act more quickly, we can run these services up and we can adopt to change. So I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen at SIX.
Corey?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Henk and Roy articulated. You know, at the start of the pandemic, we definitely saw an acceleration in cloud adoption. But I would say that the use cases were much more tactical. So, you know, our customers were calling us because they needed quick DR, right? Because like Henk said, you know, you just didn't have, supply chains were disrupted because of the pandemic. People didn't have access to buildings. So it was easier to spin up a disaster recovery solution in the cloud. We also saw the user pattern shift, right? So people that were traditionally using maybe software solutions that were running locally on a desktop were now moving to a service-based technology or more web applications, right? People were logging into their iPads and their iPhones more often. And, you know, people needed to scale the compute for those types of solutions because they went from 50 users to 500 on those solutions and they needed a quick way to scale. And I think that's just, you know, I think people got familiar with cloud, people got more comfortable with cloud because they needed to at that point in time. And now we just, you know, the ball's rolling and we just start to see the progression and the maturity of the organizations and just the creativity, you know, throughout firms.
Yeah, great. If we look at what kind of firms are typically embracing cloud solutions, and maybe we should even look back to the time before the pandemic hit, do we see that there are particular firms that have been early adopters, and has that perhaps changed? And maybe We start now with Patrick to answer that question.
Yes, I think, and just to also echo the first question, I think there was a natural consequence of such a significant event or crisis, which is driving us to change our behavior. Yeah, it's the same with innovation and standardization. And before that all happened, that definitely accelerated that trend towards the cloud services. We saw more or less two different segments. The first segment was, I would say a more routine segment where companies just reviewed their target operating models. And because it was like a sign of a time where they said, yeah, what should I do? Should I go for on-premise, or should I now look at that, suspicious cloud thing? And of course, as we all know, most of the companies had their security policies or their concerns with just giving particular data in the cloud and how to adopt that. But these companies looked at it and said, okay, before we go on-premise, we try to adopt a cloud solution. That was the one pattern, a normal review. But where we actually saw a huge drive were in companies before COVID that had a very strong digitalization strategy. And these companies were faced with one huge problem. They had a lot of data management teams and data that were collecting data, et cetera, et cetera. But what they actually identified is, and this is this famous sentence, data is an asset. Yes, data is an asset, but only the data that allows you to make decisions on it that then benefit your business. All the rest of the noise data is not so much an asset, it's just noise. And they were actually forced to look at their capacities and say, how do I actually manage my new requirements in terms of how to actually work with the data and really add value to what I do with the data instead of just bringing it in and cleansing it, so to speak. And these companies said, we actually can differentiate between a core competency, which is decision-making in some areas, from a critical business process. And data sourcing is a critical business process, but it's not necessarily a core competency of an investment company. And these companies, very large ones, especially looked into how can we define a service in the industry that is considering that ecosystem tone, that is combining multiple vendors in terms of treatment, but also is not only a feed of data coming in via raw data or cleansed data or whatever, but also is managing the whole changes around it that is part of a normal data lifecycle and the data supply chain. So these were very, very strong and very, very favorable adopters of these technologies even before the pandemic. Now, the rest, I have to say also, and to echo Hank, we're not happy that it happened, but we're definitely saw the benefits in driving a change in behavior and adopting these, because, as you also said, Corey, they started challenging their operating models. They saw that their operating models are not scaling, that they're very volatile, and they want to reallocate also risk. So these are the two, I would say, main groups that we're seeing.
Thanks, Patrick. And Corey, can you agree with that, or do you see also other types of?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Patrick. I think the key point is that data is driving decisions, and data is driving decisions across both the buy side, the sell side, firms that are small and or large. I've been working with cloud for quite some time now, and when I first started speaking with customers, it was oftentimes on the buy side, and smaller firms looking to just migrate everything to the cloud in hopes of saving money. And for some firms that worked, and for other firms that didn't work. But today, I think the thought process has progressed. People have learned a lot more about cloud, and cloud services have certainly improved, and vendors have been embracing cloud to offer clients more choice. So what you start to see is people trying to build out solutions and solve business problems. On the buy side, that could be, delving into real-time risk or real-time volatility analysis. On the sell side, we see a lot of customers building out innovation labs to retain talent and talk about next generation technologies to stop some of the disruption happening from startups. We also see the trend towards just, I need to migrate my infrastructure workloads to the cloud becoming okay, what business am I trying to solve? What business problem am I trying to solve? And can cloud help me solve that? And what we're seeing there is then it's leading to hybrid cloud environments and multi-cloud environments. So customers are choosing to run certain workloads on-prem if it's highly secure data. Some people are trying to use multiple clouds. Maybe Microsoft for some of their technology stack around Office 365 or Excel, which is still prevalent throughout the financial services industry, and other firms using Google for some of their machine learning capabilities. So they're really trying to pick and choose their cloud providers to build out these best of breed solutions, which I think is which is a great change for the industry, because it just leads to just better application stacks, better technology stacks, and better business opportunities for our customers and the customers of our clients.
Thanks, Corey. Roy, how are you seeing that at SIX? You are, of course, both a consumer of cloud services as well as serving many clients through cloud, I would have thought. How have you seen the development of a migration to cloud over the last, say, 2 years?
So again, we're sort of echoing each other a little bit here, but internally and with customers, I think what we've seen is this change from a data, if I can say, a data scientist, large set of data that they want on the cloud to look for patterns into. They were doing that, I would say, as a sort of byproduct. They were sort of alongside the business. I think now what we're seeing in large firms, but also in small firms, is a lot more adoption at the front end of the business, who may have some programmers that they can utilize who are familiar with modern API technology. And I think we're seeing a lot more smaller firms looking at how, and we sort of use the terminology interchangeably, how they can use APIs or cloud to get the best data set for them at the right moment in time. So I think that's a big shift that we've seen, is that it was data science. It's now lots of different use cases, and they're looking at smaller data sets with an API usage. I would say that's a trend that we've certainly seen.
Staying with you, Roy, for a moment, what can you say about the use case for trading type of roles? I guess we all find that the most difficult concept to grasp, that you can actually trade over the cloud from your home, at the same sort of levels of performance that you were used to in the office. Can you elaborate on that, or do you think that it's going to,
I think we can. Yeah, I think if I can, and again, this is a discussion we had. There are different types of trading. Corey mentioned latency earlier. There is some trading which is super low latency. You need a super low latent feed to be able to trade. There are other trades that you want to perform which don't rely on low latency. They follow a research pattern, or they follow a trend pattern. And to do that, you can rely on the data, because it doesn't need super low latency. What you need is the full access to the data to be able to check your patterns, to be able to check your research, to be able to check that you're going in the right direction to support your trade. And I think that is the type of trading and decision making that we're seeing the cloud now supporting more and more. So yeah, super low latency. Are we there yet? I don't think we are, and we haven't seen that particularly. And I think we talked about this, there are some cloud, let's call them not issues, but hurdles that we have to overcome. We talked about, as soon as you get into super low latency trading, what about getting the compute power at the right time so that you can actually support that trade? That's something that's not quite there yet. The cloud is good for taking data in and out, processing the data, getting these trends right. It's not quite there for super low latency compute because of the compute power you might have to invest in. So I think, yes, it's moving towards trading, but it's not at the low latency end. It's on the research end, pattern end. And I think that's where all of us as firms have, we've put 30 years worth of corporate actions in a file accessible on the cloud. Yeah. So it's big data sets that allow you to do this pattern recognition, this research, which is where we really are today. And I see that increasing. I think Patrick mentioned things that we all do. We need to make sure that our data sets are more interoperable. Yeah. Make sure that if you're using corporate actions from SIX and you're using real-time data from ICE and you're using some reference data from Bloomberg, that they all marry up and meet in a nice way. I think we can use cloud technology to advance those things that we've all sort of done a little bit of, but I think we can do a little bit more.
Yeah. Henk, can you echo that, or is ICE looking at it differently, perhaps?
I think I'm looking at it differently, or ICE is looking at it differently. To a certain extent, I agree actually with everything Roy said. I mean, those use cases, we've seen move from big data to non-latency sensitive streaming use cases. But actually, I think the market already has moved on to the next level. And let me actually explain something real quick, right? So when most participants think about cloud connectivity, they naturally think about the internet, because that's what you and I are using to access cloud services all day long, using our smartphones, for example. But it doesn't have to be like that. So on the ICE side, we rolled out a solution not that long ago, 18 months ago, right before the pandemic. I mean, stroke of luck, I guess. It's called Cloud Connect. The Cloud Connect is using a partner called Megaport. Effectively, what we've done is we've built physical bridges between our network and all major public cloud providers around the world, providing huge chunks of bandwidth, 1, 5, 10 gigs worth of bandwidth. And we can guarantee a quality of service in terms of cloud connectivity the same way you would guarantee quality of service using traditional, let's say, leased lines or cross-connect type setups. So latency, security, privacy, all of those things are absolutely guaranteed. Now, what we've seen, and this is actually striking because I didn't really see that coming myself, is that last year, one in those 2 customers that connected from the cloud to receive our feed were doing so for absolute trading purposes, some of them even algo trading. Now, noted to Roy's point, ultra-low latency trading, you're going to collocate right on-prem, and you're going to kick out every software vendor in the middle because you want to have really control end-to-end down to the nanosecond. But millisecond latency trading can definitely be serviced over the cloud, but you have to set it up in a way that you can maintain quality of service, even during, for example, periods of distress. I think that's something I didn't see coming, and we were surprised by the bandwidth these customers want to carve out as part of their cloud connectivity. I'm talking literally a gig worth of bandwidth in order to power their algo that sits literally on the cloud. So just one extra dimension to what Roy says. I think the market is really quite maturing in that way.
That's great. That's very interesting indeed. Patrick, do you see similar differences in how you productize things at SimCorp, driven by cloud solutions and the expectations that your clients are having?
Yeah, I think the technology aspect that we're touched on, I would say the different product aspect, that's one thing. But now wearing the hat of a customer, what does the customer want? Of course, the customer wants a seamless data access experience, regardless which use case they're having and regardless which state of data, whether it's raw data, whether it's ordered, whether it's golden copy data. And they want to have that accessible, but also, like Roy pointed out, interoperable with their ecosystem. And that is the challenge. Yeah, the customer will never have just one data vendor, or one external data source or internal data source. What they want is a kind of, let's call it hub or repository, where each and every kind of data is ready for them to be used. And I think what we see here, and these services and also business areas that are now taken on to the cloud step by step, or being packaged in a service, that's just, I would say, with the evolution of it. Yeah, because of course we all cannot start boil the ocean. So we need to actually have a plan on what do we bring to the cloud and what also makes sense to have in the cloud at that particular point, and what does not make sense to have in the cloud. We have a lot of discussions also with the customer on kinds of data. Do they need a golden copy for everything? it's questionable. Sometimes you don't need a golden copy. You just need to identify patterns, as it was said, or trends, where this data does have complete different data quality requirements as it would have data for other business areas. And to create that ecosystem to enable the customer to choose and to select and being this ready for demand, that is one of our maxims that we're having in setting this up. And of course, we're also working here with the data vendors, because ultimately I think we all owe it to our customers, especially the commonly shared ones, that we agree on a set of solutions in the cloud that are really working for them. Yeah? And now we have the chance to redefine certain things, and we should do it. And I know this has a lot of challenges, and as you all know, there are a lot of data license challenges and segregation of data challenges. But this will be the future.
Excellent. Talking about licensing issues, then driven by a migration to cloud. How is that changing? How are all of you, adapting yourselves to this new way of working? Including things like on-demand provision of data. Corey, can you say what's Bloomberg doing about that?
Yeah, sure, happy to. With Bloomberg today, right, we obviously have productionized solutions in the cloud today for our reference data and our low latency real-time streaming data. And for those products, because they're data products and they're used by many customers, we chose a similar commercial model that we have today. So the licensing and the pricing is really unchanged. We've just tried to reduce the total cost of ownership, because we feel that for data-driven solutions, the cloud is just an enabler for our clients. However, also in enterprise data, in addition to our data services, we offer technology services for data management, technology services and lab environments for quants, and we're progressing those solutions to become more managed services, and using the public cloud or running in the public cloud for our clients. And with those services, those technology services, where we have we're running a lot of analytics on behalf of our customers to provide them with resultant data. We're looking to change those types of commercial models, because when you're a vendor like a Bloomberg that has strong relationships with the major public cloud providers, and that you spend quite a bit of money with those cloud providers, you could reduce your overall compute costs, right? One of the most expensive things in the cloud is running compute. So if there's areas where we can have so we probably have a lower compute cost than the average buy-side firm. So if there's areas where we can leverage cloud to run analytics for our clients, and we can use our compute costs, which are lower, to make those to run those analytics, we can in turn provide our customers with savings in a packaged manner. So it's you pay us for an analytic, it's managed by us, and we'll take on those compute costs, and we allow you to do that on demand. So you run n number of calculations. So you're not being charged on a monthly basis, you're being charged on a calculation basis, and we feel that we can make it cheaper, because we can do it. We can do things at scale versus our clients. I think that's on our commercial model. I think the other thing that cloud is doing throughout the industry, and it's surely on the market data side, there's a ton of legacy market data constructs out there, like sites and applications, and there's various exchanges and providers that incorporate those into the charging model. And I think the cloud is really challenging those constructs, because what's a site? Now you're in a cloud and things are just available globally very easily. It's a massive global network that through private connectivity you can peer VPCs across the world fairly easily these days, with, like Hank mentioned, 10 gig connections pretty much on demand. And then the other construct is just the concept of an application, where there's the concept of monolithic applications, large applications that do everything, I think are starting to go away, and we're starting to see API-driven applications and microservice applications. So how do you count those types of applications is another thing that I'm looking forward to see changing over the course of time as people migrate to cloud.
Excellent. We're kind of moving towards the end of the panel discussion, but there's one question I really want to ask all of you, and that is, how this move towards cloud solutions is playing into the hands of the likes of Microsoft, of Amazon and Google. Are they going to be the next sort of infrastructure providers of the financial information services industry? Are we sort of seeing, de-emphasis on the classic threat type solutions, and is it all going to sort of now being controlled by those big tech firms? I know it's a very open question, but I'm hoping that someone will have a first step at it.
Mate, if I could, maybe I'll start.
Roy, you're the first.
Yeah. So my view would be no. You've got other exchange providers on this call as well. Yeah. We have expertise in the financial industry that those providers don't have. I actually like the way that those cloud providers are up in their game. If you look at the cloud before it came to the financial industry, things like compliance, security, tracing probably were not at the level that they needed to be. So I think they're playing a different game. They have many other business models. They could well buy one of us and become the provider of choice. I don't think it's their business model. I think they can earn an awful lot of revenue by selling their cloud services to us and managing our services for us. And I think that is a business that they'll be in for the next 3, 4, 5 years before they look at changing their business model. I think there's enough growth for them to exist side by side with us.
Henk, would you agree?
Yeah, I would totally concur with that. I think market data, as big as we think our industry is small compared to what these cloud providers can go after. It's a very niche and specialist segment. I agree with Roy. You need a lot of expertise in order to do this well. There's the topic of data licensing and data control, data policies, right? Very, very complex, very hairy, so to speak, difficult to understand. I think these players have a different game to play. They're definitely a facilitator, and they can work and partner with vendors like ourselves. Is there a bigger role for them to play? Perhaps, but I don't think they can go after this very niche market that requires specialist attention. That's my view as well.
Finally, Patrick, your view on that?
Yes, I can just echo that. I think the point that Hank made is the core point. It's not worth the effort for them at that particular time, I would say. Yeah, we all know that the devils are in the details, and this will take a long time until this becomes really an issue or really a question. It's the same thing when Alibaba started to sell insurances and all these kind of stuff. I think their business model at the moment focuses on something else.
Excellent. I've been keeping an eye open for questions from the public, but I don't think there are any. That must mean that it was all crystal clear and that you were able to convey your points, without any unclarity, and made them all very clear. And let me actually then conclude on that note. I would like to thank all of you for your participation in this panel and for your insights. This is also then the end of the morning program. We will take a break now of approximately 25 minutes, which is, of course, a great opportunity to visit the booths of the participating vendors. In many cases, there will also be demos of products. We, of course, encourage you to take some time and to look at those products as well. Again, thanks, Corey, Roy, Henk, and Patrick for your participation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Good to see everyone. Have a good day.